Welcome, everyone. This is Glenda Dawson, and you're watching Glenda's Dragons Den. LD could not be here with us tonight. I keep sending him in these adventures. One of these days, he'll catch on that I just want to do this show by myself, but shh, don't tell him. No, he's doing me a favor, as always. He's a great guy, and just schedules couldn't meet together today. But with that being said, I want to thank everyone for liking our stuff, for sharing, for subscribing. Send me emails, whatever that you so see fit. And then we appreciate all the comments and the um, all of the extra steps that you guys take to watch us every week. With that being said, I have a phenomenal guest here with me, and his name is T. Allen. And so, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for being here. It's really an honor and a pleasure to have you here. So, tell the audience, tell us about you.
Yeah, so I run what used to be a podcast called Ghost Hunter Advice. Now it's a live stream that is exclusively on Parapost Network. Before that, I was investigating the paranormal for over 20 years. Started back in 2001, really heavy into investigations and going through things and doing residential investigations, helping people and trying to learn everything I could. I was licensed as a private investigator. So for a long time, I had to keep those two things separate and keep my ghost hunting completely under wraps. I didn't want to go into court and be testifying and have something come up on the stand when I'm doing like a criminal defense, or if I'm doing like some sort of really, really high dollar legal case. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to have to explain that. Um, People found out anyway. So I remember being contacted by this other private investigator who was like, "Hey, I hear that you're kind of into this stuff. I don't believe in it, and I never want to see it again." And he just shoved his client over on me, who was said they had a psychic ability, and they were predicting a murder. And we worked on that for a while, but we're never able to confirm anything. But it was one of those interesting things. And then I found out several judges and several higher ranking people in the legal community locally were actually very interested in it, but also, kind of in the closet with it,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody wants that becoming public. If you've been doing it for a while and you get those looks from friends, you kind of understand how that's going to creep into the professional world.
Right.
I was public for a long time with Ghost Hunter Advice. When I finally came out with that, I
Mm-hmm.
grew the podcast to a pretty good followership, listenership. And basically, I just wanted to make a show that was what I wish I had when I started. A way to learn from someone else's mistakes who have been doing it for a while, a way to keep people from getting caught up in fads and different types of equipment
Mm-hmm.
that are more gimmick than use. Um, and then I switched careers, and suddenly I am the face of a brand now. And legally and with some branding stuff, I have to keep these two worlds separate again. So I came up with the T Allen moniker, mainly for Google and for search engine stuff. I don't care if people use my name on video. We don't have the ways to search that through audio, and nobody's really looking that close. But
Right.
yeah. Yeah, did that. It's just a live stream on Parapost now, and I've moved. I don't really do a ton of investigations anymore. I'm not going into houses. I don't really actively ghost hunt. Every once in a while, if something meets the criteria for me to get involved with it, basically, if it's interesting enough for me, I might go out and check it out. But I consider myself more of a content creator and podcaster now than an investigator.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, Ghost Hunter Advice is a live stream. I own a podcast studio called Truly Odd Studios. We produce true crime and paranormal podcasts with historic horrors coming out, and Murder We Drink coming out later this year.
Mm-hmm.
And those are more entertainment based, documentary style podcasts that are heavily produced. So those are coming out in various seasons. I also produce other people's podcasts. I do editing, soundscaping, um, pretty much all of production and podcast management for others, along with my day job.
Okay. So, just curious. has this interest been with you your whole life, or did something happen and created that wonder and that investigative energy in you?
I've always been interested in just the investigative process.
Mhm.
I grew up in a home that I thought had activity. I mean, I know most kids just like, oh, there's creepy stuff in the hallway. There's something under the bed.
Right.
But my grandmother really fostered that love for the unknown. I remember watching Unsolved Mysteries with her and just seeing kind of the creepy stuff.
Mm,
The one that really sticks out was the haunted Toys R Us that was on that show where there was a woman stalking stuff, and I just remember her hair being pulled up by something.
right.
But yeah, I love that show. And we were in the supermarket one day checking out, and I want to say I was like 9ish, and there were these magazines called Disney Adventures. I was super into Ghostbusters. I was a kid,
Mhm.
and I was like, "What's that say? Does that say Ghostbuster?" And I picked up the magazine. It said "Real Life Ghostbuster," and it was an article about Troy Taylor.
Oh,
Um, so I read that and was like, "This is a real thing. I could do this." And so when I got my driver's license, several years later,
right.
I got my first car and my first ghost hunting kit,
Mhm.
and went out and started just kind of looking at local legends. I do not condone this. I don't recommend that you do it today. We were able to get away with so much back then, especially living in a small town where we knew all the cops.
Mhm.
But I would go into these abandoned buildings and I would jump onto this property and just go out there and really look for stuff and try to stir things up.
Right.
And I ended up actually meeting Troy Taylor later on, working with the American Ghost Society. That was his group as the
Mhm.
representative for Tennessee, and really growing with that. So that's yeah, that's how I got into it. I did it for a long time.
Mhm. Sounds like you had a lot of fun, and it is true. Back then, nobody was recording you. That's the first thing.
Yep.
And they basically would just say, okay, you're safe, get out of here, don't do this again. But, now things are a little tougher. And also, when you look back, now you realize the danger of walking into a property that
Yep.
the roof could fall on you, the floor could just cave in. So it is very
Oh,
important.
my favorite experience with that was we were coming out of this, and it was mostly an outdoor location, but there was a brick well house on the property that we had gotten a lot of cool activity at.
Hmm.
We were coming out, and this property had a curfew. We were trespassing, and we were inside the building. The cops roll up, and they see me carrying equipment cases, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh man, I'm hunting ghosts." And they're like, "Open up the case." And so we opened the case up, and they're like, "You have the stuff." And I was like, "What do you mean you have the stuff?" And the cop's like, "Do you want to go back in?" And so we went in, and then like two other cops showed up, and it was like me and three cops going through this, and we ended up staying the night.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. You just never know, right?
Mhm.
But they also probably had to keep it under
Yeah.
wraps that they were
Yes.
into all that because, you get questioned.
Mhm.
And um, now I know you transitioned, and did that help you when you became a private investigator?
A big reason that kept with investigations was I was so young. I was too young to actually be an investigator, and it's the same skill sets. So you're interviewing people, you're getting facts together, you're creating reports for clients, and you're
Mhm,
letting them know like what's going on with the property, what's the history of the property, trying to verify or disprove their claims.
mhm,
And so the two kind of played hand in hand. It was good practice before I got licensed,
mhm,
and then once I got licensed, I had access to a lot more training as an investigator.
mhm,
I started out like everybody else does in surveillance, so I knew a lot about the cameras. That helped with camera setup and
mhm.
understanding how to really get every piece of a property um, under watch or under camera.
Right.
How to keep detailed reports. The big thing and the big shortcoming that I see with other investigators is the note taking. So yeah, you might have heard a disembodied voice, but did your equipment catch something on this side of the house? Was there something else happening on a camera? And
Mhm,
can you get multiple pieces of evidence to corroborate? So I learned how to do that stuff. Later on, I became a forensic interviewer. So a long time ago, it was called interview and interrogation. So I was the person who went in and did the questioning. I got the truth from people, and that was my job, just to get the truth.
mhm,
That helped more than just about anything.
mhm,
Um, And then later on, I started doing a lot of background work. So I got really into doing deep dives into property records, people's backgrounds, criminal histories, financial histories, investigations into characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that that is probably where things started to get interesting. And I was probably investigating at this point for about 10 years, both as a PI and a paranormal investigator, a
Mm-hmm.
ghost hunter. I started looking into properties and looking into histories. And I found that if I can go to property tax records and find owners, from owners, maybe find tenants and find people that lived in a building, if I have a client who is making a claim to a haunting, they're seeing something specific, they're hearing something specific, and I can't disprove it. If I can find someone who, or several someones who lived at that property that had no contact with that person, and it's not a stigmatized property, it's not something that's widely known,
Right.
and they're telling me the same thing that my client's telling me, that was more impressive as a piece of evidence to say a place was or was not haunted or had activity
Mm-hmm.
than an EVP or a video or a feeling or even a personal experience.
Right. Right. No, it's true because then you had other people's experiences to e- back everything up. So it's kind
Mhm.
of evidence upon evidence. So now you say that your PI training helped you with the camera setup and all that other stuff. Do you teach that? Do you talk about that in your show?
I do. So I actually, my very first podcast was a private investigator podcast.
Hmm.
I started teaching and mentoring other PIs around the country and then around the world on how to do investigations, on how to set up, how to run their businesses, how to do sales. And then I started writing for a PI magazine and ran their PI 101 column for a while. And basically, just I became a thought leader in that industry before I transitioned out.
Hmm.
And I took a lot of that and a lot of that content and modified it for ghost hunters. And
Hmm.
that's where ghost hunter advice came from. I talked about this is how you do a background on a property. This is how you do a proper diagram of a house so that you can map things out. These are the
Hmm.
photographs you need to take of a scene when you're doing your baselines so that you have points of reference when you're explaining things or when you're going back and doing things later to debunk.
Right.
Also, the biggest thing was properly knowing what an investigation is. I hear people say they've investigated a property 50 times. No, you didn't. Yeah, it's one investigation. You did 50 vigils. A
Right.
vigil is a part of an investigation, not the investigation. Um, but just stuff like that.
Mm. Yeah, very good, very good. And now, does it help to have had a grandmother that was into all that stuff?
Yeah, I don't think that I would have really gone down that path if I didn't have someone at that age that said it was possible.
Mm.
Now I'm going to relate that to what I do now. I write, I create content.
Right.
I do that at a professional level where I'm paid for it.
Right.
And when I was growing up, that was not something people did for a living. That was not even on the table for most people unless you were already at a certain financial level. You had people in the industry, or there was something that got you in as a writer or as a personality.
Right.
Um, I spent, and I feel I say I wasted my time as an investigator because that was a job that I can do, and that's what everyone was telling me as a child was possible for me to do. And I liked it through my 20s, but when I got to my 30s, it hurt. Um, it's not a pleasant job. And I started seeing all this stuff with technology, and when I started writing as a private investigator and doing the content, I was like, I could do this with hauntings or with whatever I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I think my dog just kicked the door. But but I can do this with whatever and really make a go of it, of having my own studio as an independent creator.
Right.
If someone would have told me that when I was younger, I would have done graphic design. I would have done something that was more into the art that I liked doing, instead of going, more technical and gritty with the private detective stuff.
Mm. Well, I think it was an experience you needed to have to get
Mhm.
to this point to know the and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because you might not, you know, You might just say, okay, well, that was my training. This is what I'm doing, and that's it. But now you're doing it because you like doing it,
Mhm.
you know, which, let's face it, a lot of us get out of high school, we go into careers or college or whatever. We really have no idea what we're doing. We just follow whatever, and hopefully it takes us wherever we need to.
Yeah. I had a client actually. I'm doing what I do. I've had access to billionaires. I've had access to sit down with individuals that are ultra high wealth individuals or high net
Mhm,
worth individuals.
mhm,
And the best piece of advice I got a couple of years ago when I started transitioning, and it was I almost said my name. It was T. Allen. Say whatever you do, do one thing for a base that builds the amount of capital you need to do what you really want.
mm,
So have that one thing that you just do for the money for a season.
mhm,
It's the part where you got to sell your soul, but then you're free to do whatever you want to after that from the experience that you got from getting to that certain level, and then also just the freedom that that gives you for having that one skill.
mm. Very good. Very good. That's very good advice, actually. And so now you run this podcast, this
Mhm.
Ghost Hunter Advice. Now, is that weekly? Is that every other week? How are you running it?
No, so this I just started doing a monthly episode, which is the podcast insights, where I'm talking about podcast industry, what downloads are, and helping like a lot of the new people that are getting on the Parapost. How
Mm-hmm.
do you set up and what like how do you run your podcast as a content creator?
Right.
I do episodes of Ghost Hunter Advice whenever I have enough questions. So it
Okay.
is just a listener question podcast now. Whenever I have about an hour's worth of content from people emailing questions,
Mm-hmm.
then I do an episode. It used to be every other week
Mm-hmm.
when it was a podcast, but now that it's a live stream,
Right.
it's just whenever I have questions.
Okay. All right. This is fair. So where can people reach you to send you?
Yeah, it's ghosthunteradvice at gmail.com.
Okay. Simple enough.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
back when it was a podcast, like I had a website for it. So you could go to ghosthunteradvice.com, click on the button, leave your voice recorded message, leave your voice recorded story. If you didn't want your voice on, I had a web page you could go to just to write out your question and stuff.
right.
But running the podcast studio, I have to look at like what shows and what resources are really giving the return on that. And
Uh-huh.
Ghost Hunter Advice, I love doing it, which is why it's still a live stream, but it's not.
Mhm. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand. So now that you're doing this, whenever you have enough questions for, say, an hour,
Mhm.
what else do you see coming from here or going from here?
What do you mean?
Well, you know that there's always something that we love to do, and we continue doing that, and then we continue to expand in that
Mhm.
one type of love or passion. Do you see yourself growing back out of Parapost or besides Parapost? Do you see yourself staying there? Do you see yourself doing like conferences and all of
Oh, gotcha. So with Ghost Hunter Advice specifically, it's just on Parapost. It's something that I do
that?
for fun, and I'm not really looking to do any sort of expansion with it.
Right.
It's a resource that's there, especially for new podcasters and individuals getting into this space and content creation, so that they have
Mhm.
a resource and they're not as lost as I was trying to figure stuff out. Um,
I was
with
lost.
yeah, right.
I had you.
Oh my God, starting it took me 2 years to start my first podcast because I was just recording and practicing and recording and practicing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like you should do some practice episodes before you pop out. But
Right.
there's so much stuff with the equipment and it can be really overwhelming because
Mhm.
once you start looking at setting up a podcast, suddenly Facebook and the algorithms start showing you all this equipment that you absolutely have to have before your first episode. It's all BS, but oh my God, it's confusing. Now with Truly Odd Studios, we do
Mhm.
have other shows coming. So
Mhm.
Historic Horrors is the paranormal show that I'm doing. It's a
Okay.
deep dive into activity that happened in like 20th century and back,
Mm.
going into the history of these properties. Some of them we know, some of them are a little lesser known,
Mhm.
but we're looking at ghosts, we're looking at cryptids, we're looking at UFOs, and we're looking at true crime, any sort of weird or horror-related, horrific event, we're doing a deep dive that'll be set up very similar to Unsolved Mysteries. So it's
Mm,
scripting and being recorded right now, where there's multiple kind of related topics on each episode, about 3 or 4, whatever gets me to that hour mark. And then that show will be coming out every other week. It is audio only, so it's on Apple, Stitcher's gone, Spotify, Amazon Music, those types of platforms where you can
right.
download straight into your phone. The same thing with Murder We Drink. Murder We Drink's a true crime podcast where we break down a true crime, bizarre or gruesome true crime, and we pair that with a cocktail. And we do a cocktail breakdown. So it's a mixology and crime podcast. That
Okay.
again, every other week. Season 1 is a 10-episode run. Season 2 will be a little bit longer. And I think we're going to try to do 2 seasons a year with that.
Okay.
Both of those are going to have premium subscriptions and premium offers. So
Mhm.
they're, I think we're looking at $5 a month. Gets access to special episodes that are not dropped to the free feed.
Right.
And then also you'll get once the show's been going for a while, we're going to add in the archive for that.
Okay. Now, you have co-hosts, I gather?
For Murder We Drink, yes.
Yes. Okay. And their could I have their name? So
Oh yeah, so her name's Kristen.
okay.
Yeah, no, she's my partner. We whenever we get our kid to bed is when we're going to be doing the recording there. We're actually this is kind of fun, and this is the reason that I chose the day job that I did. It's one of just to have capital to do this.
Right.
We're building a proper recording studio with sound insulated walls, the same stuff you would find in a quality recording studio.
Nice.
The mics will be run into the soundboard that we have, and we'll have proper padding around, which this is a smaller studio. We've got padding and soundproofing and stuff up so that you're not getting the echoes. But we're going for the best sound that we can get there, and possibly doing some video down the road. But for the most part, audio is the most cost effective to make, and
Mm-hmm.
it seems to have the best return.
Mm. Mm, very nice. Good luck with that, because I know I have a friend who also did their own little studio, and I hardly see her after that.
Yep.
She's in there, and that's it. I'm like, you're just escaping from your children. That's all you're doing. Don't tell me you're recording. You're just escaping in there. Nobody can find you. You're locked in there.
It's soundproof. I mean, it's awesome.
There you go.
The 4-year-old running around the house screaming, have no idea.
Yes, it must
I
be.
when I started doing this, so I'm actually in my office, and what
Right,
I've got is a small closet in the office that's been soundproofed inside with the ring lights and the green screen behind me and the
right,
stuff set up the boom arms. But my son will run around, and every once in a while I hear him. And I got good at podcast editing and noise reduction, specifically like bringing the voice forward and getting the background hum and like weird noises out
right.
because of him. Because like we would be talking and then it would just be this screech. So I've got to go into the editing software and you look at the waveforms and you've got to isolate where that screech is. And just it was a nightmare trying to figure out what it is. And as his voice changed, I kept having to do the process over and over to isolate the frequency of his voice and take it out. It was a nightmare. So having a soundproof room is going to be awesome.
Yes, yes. Editing is bad enough without the extras. Well, I am now babysitting my granddaughter, one of my granddaughters,
Cool.
full time. So um, I understand. I understand completely. They're you pick the time that they're just going to be quiet or sleeping, whatever, and all of a sudden that's the time that they decide to do everything.
Mhm.
So, now, what made you really go into all this?
I like content creation.
Hmm.
And that's what made me stay in it. Getting into the paranormal, it was just an interest.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So, creating content, you love to mix, and you love to just see people's reaction and provide the service and the information, right?
Yeah, the value, the entertainment value. So it's information is great, and that's the number one reason people listen to podcasts. But another
Mhm.
reason is to connect and uh, Actually, it's probably a good reason to go into. I like connecting with people. It's the
Mhm,
same reason that I do sales and that I've been self-employed my entire adult life. I like to provide value for people. I like to see their reaction to that value that's provided,
mhm,
and I like to make connections. So we talked about this before the podcast, but my day job, because yes, you're going to have a day job when you're doing creative stuff.
mhm,
I work in real estate. I work in sales, and because I like to connect with people,
mhm,
podcasting, according to a study that just came out that I went over on my show the other day, Magna Global.
mhm,
Um, Podcasting is the most influential and has the deepest connection of any sort of content that you can create. We've, as podcasters, have surpassed celebrities, so movie stars, TV stars, even politicians, as far as the influence that we have over the individuals who listen to us, because they
mm,
spend so much time with us through the day.
mhm, mhm.
When I had Ghost Hunter Advice on the regular RSS feed with all of the back episodes,
Right,
there were people, and I could see when people were listening to it. When I would go into my Apple stats, I could see like, okay, so a person just went through my entire backlist. That
right,
means they had my voice playing like 15 hours.
right.
Um, and people start feeling a connection. I think it was 80 something percent of millennials said they felt a deep connection to podcast hosts.
Mm,
It's a big responsibility, but I like the feedback. I really love the emails that I get when people enjoy the show or when they have questions.
me
And
too.
it's a great way to connect. Millennials, we're called the loneliest generation because we grew up kind of moving into tech and we've isolated so much working from home,
Mhm,
working in the tech industry to grow it to what it is.
mm,
And we don't have a whole lot of connection. So it's one of those interesting ways we can connect.
mm. Very good, yes. I'm not a millennial, but I understand. It's, yeah, I grew up when the internet was AOL.
Yep.
And the AOL groups where everybody, oh my God, we could get on today, and only a certain amount of people were allowed in, and
Yep.
everybody was like, kick someone else, I could get in, that
Yep.
kind of thing. And it's like, okay, all right, who knew? Who knew? Um, so tell us a little bit about the other shows, the ones that you're about to that you're recording and you're about to get out. Uh, you know.
Yeah. So the first one that's going to drop is Historic Horrors.
Mhm.
It is heavily produced. It's a documentary style podcast where I narrate the histories of these properties, the events that have happened, and eyewitness reports. There might be some stuff stitched in if I can find, I think the licensing for press releases and stuff like that.
Right.
Licensing is the biggest issue with getting that. I've got a composer, so we will have some soundscaping and music done for the show.
Mm,
And I'm looking to create an experience that's similar to what you would watch if you were watching Investigation Discovery and have that audio level. Season
mhm,
one's usually a little dicey,
mhm,
but yeah. So it's just we're breaking stuff down, getting into the histories of those things. Murder We Drink it's partially scripted when we're going through and we're talking about the cases.
mhm,
But the bulk of that episode or that podcast is mine and Kristen's discussion. Me as a former investigator who worked missing persons, who has
mhm,
experience with investigating and looking at cases like this from that technical points,
mhm,
and from the viewpoint of a layman, from a mother who is raising a child in the world where
mhm.
this crazy stuff happens.
Right,
And we lighten it up. We pair that with a cocktail.
right.
I think season one we decided to do Murder on the Beach,
Okay.
so, summertime cocktails mixed with a murder that happened on a vacation or a beach. Um, and then we'll break down the cocktail, talk about the recipe. We're planning on, because we're recording all 10 episodes and then doing all the post production on it.
Right.
When we release those, if you follow on Facebook, Murder We Drink will drop the recipe so that when the episode drops, if you want to, you can drink along with us. If
Okay.
you're 21 or older.
And now, so you bring in your piece of PI, so you kind of say, okay, that do you ever question the investigators,
Oh
or
yeah.
how do you handle that?
Not every investigator, not every person with a badge is a good guy or
Right.
competent.
Right.
Um, so yeah, if they've done the best they can, then that's going to show through in the investigation.
Mhm.
If they've not, then yeah, we'll point that out.
Mm, okay. I was
It's
just curious.
unbiased.
Good. And when you do the history of those places, um, do you do it? Do you go through all the historical records and all that other stuff, or yeah?
Yeah, so it depends on the property and what records are there. We're looking for eyewitness accounts, eyewitness reports, the same thing that you would find on the investigation discovery,
Hmm.
so or a podcast that's done by a studio like Wondery or something like that.
Very good. Um, Now, do you see yourself doing anything else besides this content?
In the paranormal world, not
Yeah.
not really. I'm more of an investigator now. Sorry, I'm less of an investigator now, more of a content creator.
Right, right. Yes, that's kind of what happened to me. At some point, I just transitioned into, okay, you guys go run around, go into
Mhm.
the properties. You do all the walking, you take all the equipment. I'll just sit here. I'll just talk to the spirits, and we'll call it a day.
Yep.
But you know, at some point, I do have that fever for if there's a property that nobody's really gone into,
Mhm.
and there isn't too much known about it. I also do a lot of private stuff, so that never gets published anywhere.
Yep.
But do you still feel that fever, that desire to do any of that?
Not really. After about 20 years, unless someone, if there's something about a case that is super interesting.
Hmm.
Maybe I haven't had anything like that pop up in a while, or maybe if a group of friends are going somewhere and I'm like, okay, this will be fun. I can get some good content out of it.
Right.
I'll go. But as far as just kind of going out to do that because I had that draw as an investigator to figure out what's going on, I I don't have that anymore. It's more about the content and about entertaining people. I also write, so part of the the podcast historical horrors
Right.
is getting people a chance to hear my writing
Right.
because those are fully scripted and they're written like a blog post or like a
Mhm.
magazine article that we read across the air. Um, I am working on a couple of books, so if something is book worthy, I'll go out and
Mhm.
check it out.
Okay, that sounds good. I was just going to ask you if you're thinking of actually doing a book,
Yeah.
and I gather it would be something of paranormal
Yeah, so
investigating.
I write under a pen name. I do some mystery novels.
Hmm.
So I do fiction, but the stuff that I write is primarily supernatural.
Okay.
The I call it true paranormal, where we're talking about hauntings. There's one that I've been working on for a while that's a background on some of the local legends here in the Tennessee Valley with a detailed investigation. So you get the actual story first. So you get the history of the property, the story, the legend,
Hmm.
and then we go in and we break down the legend and we say, this is true. This is backed up by fact. There was no record to support this.
Hmm.
And after spending whatever, how many days at a property, this was the findings.
Very good. I love that whole idea. It gives somewhat a chance to, or for me, it would give me a chance to look at the whole case
Mhm.
and unbiased eyes and go in there and say, okay, this may have somehow, started as a rumor. Somebody just needed a little bit of fame, so so a lot of people think that you can make a lot of money in paranormal,
Yeah.
and
Nope.
no, you're actually paying money usually
Yep.
most of the times. So, now, have you ever gone to a place where has left you wondering if there's more? Like you feel that there's more, you have an idea that there's more, but it just isn't being shown to you?
Um, Not really. So when I go in, I'm more or less it's very mechanical.
Mhm,
We're gonna go in there, we're gonna see what's up. If I get a weird feeling, I'll document that.
mhm,
But for the investigations that we do, if there's any question at all, we're not just going in one time or two times. The investigations and residential investigations I did in the past, they went on for months.
mhm.
So you stay there until you get a solution or until you get kicked out.
Right.
That's yeah. So no, not really. I did have things happen that were unexplained. I had some more intense episodes that stayed with me for a while, but
Mhm.
nothing that really left me wondering whether or not something was there.
Okay.
Now I have over the years gone back and forth on what I think is there. If there is something there, if it's something that it's its own personality, or if there's something about certain properties that just interact with us differently.
Mhm.
Maybe it's actually us manipulating some of the energy there and creating some sort of thing that seems to have its own personality, but really is just a manifestation of what we're feeling and what we're thinking.
Mhm. Mm. It's possible. It's
Mhm.
possible. Because it's very strange that the earth is as old as it is, and all these lands and all these properties and all everywhere. I mean, you could step out of the front door and yet only certain properties have a lot of activity,
Yep.
which even cemeteries, you go to one cemetery and it's literally, excuse the pun, dead.
Mhm.
And then you go to another cemetery and you feel a lot of stuff and you get a lot of evidence, which is, to me, has always been uh, a question that I have myself.
And that was
Um,
one of the reasons, like, we started when I go into a property now, like, if somebody calls me and I talked about the criteria, if
mhm,
it's interesting, it's got to interest me. But the person experiencing whatever's going on, cool. What's your life like? What's your stress level like?
mhm,
How's your mental health? How and like I start, and I'm not trying to find out if somebody's like, there's a trigger word here, crazy.
right.
But I'm trying to figure out like what's really going on there. Where's all of the energy in the house coming from? What kind of stuff are you putting off into the property? Is it
Mhm,
possible that it's being caused by you?
mhm,
Um, and I also recommend people get into therapy. They get into doing some workouts, walk, start doing things, and I have them do things to put more positive energy in their life, especially if
mhm,
they're in a bad position.
mhm,
I've never gone into a house where the children were terrified and everybody was on edge
mhm,
and things were falling off the wall. And it was like that violent movie style haunting,
mhm.
and everything was okay with the family.
Mhm.
I've never experienced that. There's always something like there was a job loss, there's alcohol,
Right.
there's drugs, there's something else there. And what I've noticed once we start putting more positive vibes into the house by
Mhm,
having them do more positive activities, talk to counselors. If they need medication, that's a
mhm,
doctor, that's a psychiatrist. They get on that. 9 times out of 10, that takes care of it.
mhm, mhm.
Um, so that's what got me thinking. Maybe it's not the spirit of someone. Maybe it's not some sort of demonic entity. Maybe it is just us and what we're putting out there. The lamp fly across the room. Cool. How are you feeling right before that happened?
Right,
You
right.
know, it's
Well, I usually get called in, my partner and I get called in when investigators go into a property and they riled up the energy,
mhm.
and then the families are left behind with a lot of negative energy. So I one of my, I shouldn't say specialties, I hate saying those words, but one of my things is to go in there and calm everything. So you're doing it basically the same way, just a little bit of a different approach. I go in there and try to talk, ask if I could go in, not just the actual physical alive owners, but whoever is there or whatever energy is there. And start by saying, I'm not here to do anything. I'm just here to hear everybody's side of it, things. And a lot of the times is not just that they're angry, a whole bunch of people walked in there and say, knock on the wall and all this other stuff, being disrespectful in a way. Because believe it or not, the owners that are alive hearing that, subconsciously they get angry because somebody's coming into their property and demanding things, whether it's to them or to somebody else or just to spirits. People don't realize how you walk into a place makes a big difference.
Yep.
And I actually get a whole lot of more evidence and a whole lot of more interaction when you walk in there peaceful and you try to calm everybody down. So, um, but that I call that remediation.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, to go in and just, okay, let's calm everybody down. But it is a lot of the times, at least I would say 50% is pre, you know, by teams that have gone in there and stirred the pot, as I call it. But the other 50% is usually something like you said in the house.
Mhm.
There's somebody who's been drinking too much or doing drugs and nobody knows about, and comes in already angry or whatever because they were angry at their job and they didn't take that extra two
Mhm.
minutes to breathe before they walked in through that door. So um, and you just never know. That also comes into play, I believe. I mean, I don't know what your opinion is, and I would love to hear it. Also comes into play the owners of the original house, their legacy, their essence that is
Mhm.
left behind. They created that out of love and to get shelter and to create happiness. And if you're walking in there all angry every single day, I'm sure they're not appreciating that.
Yeah,
That's just
Picard's first rule of forensics, uh, nothing can touch something without leaving a trace behind.
right.
So whatever energy is there at that house, whatever the owners put into it, it's gonna feed off of that type of energy. It becomes kind of a depository.
Hmm.
So you have these people, and humans are complex. You can be happy and pissed off at the same time. You can be angry, upset. Your world is going crazy, but you still have those happy moments, and you remember those happy moments, so you identify as a happy person.
Hmm.
When really you're sitting at home, your husband's not there because he's out and he's with his secretary, and you know what's going on, but you're not going to say it. You're not even going to admit it to yourself because it's going to shatter your reality and it's going to completely break you down.
Right.
Your kids are the best in the world, except one of them just cut the other one's hair with scissors. They keep getting in trouble. You love your child so much, but they keep pulling on your arm. They keep wrapping their legs around you. They keep just jumping on you and diving on you because little kids always have to touch you all of
Right.
the time. And your body is not really yours anymore, but you're happy because that's the way it's supposed to be because you have that family. You
Right.
have all of these things and emotions that bubble under the surface. And the more we push them down, I think there's certain places where they interact with that environment and those
Mhm.
emotions come out on their own and things start happening. It's
Yeah.
a manifestation of stress. Once the stress is dealt with,
Mhm.
once the space starts getting more positivity in it,
Mhm.
a lot of the stuff goes away.
Mhm. I'm a big believer on that too.
Mm.
So, is there anything that you would love to share that you haven't talked about yet?
Just a thought with teams. You had mentioned that a minute ago. Teams going in and provoking and doing. I'm just there's a time for that. If you're running an experiment and it's safe and
Right.
you need something, it's a tool in the belt. It is
Right.
not the first tool. It should not be your only tool, and
Right.
it should not be your first tool.
Right.
There's a better way to do it, and I think a lot of people just mimic what they see on television
Mhm.
when they're going into places. And the biggest thing that you see on television that was not a thing before Ghost Hunters is paranormal teams in general.
Mhm.
Stop getting t-shirts and hats printed with your damn team logos and going into these houses and people's property and lives, flashing all of your equipment that you're pulling out of your car in their neighborhoods, wearing t-shirts with skulls on them, with flames on them, and with these like tap out style early 2000s graphics all over them because you think it would make a cool tattoo, but you don't want it, so you got it on a shirt.
Uh-huh.
Please stop doing that. So when I do investigations and when
Mhm.
I was investigating toward the end, I didn't work with a team. You just go,
No.
if I needed help, I'd bring in an assistant, but for the most part, I would just go out there and get it done because
Mhm.
that's the way it's been done for
Mhm.
before television, and it's more
Right.
effective. You're able to actually get evidence, have experiences, and you don't have to worry about cross contamination. Also, those historic properties in historic neighborhoods with high net worth people who have jobs in the public eye, who have real problems, don't want their neighbors knowing what's going on. If you go
Right.
to their house and you're in a vest and a tie, or you're dressed like a regular person
Right.
from the office who's dropping by the house, you're going to get more access. You're going
Right.
to have a better time. So
Mhm.
I will say, if you like going out and hunting ghosts with your friends and stuff, that's great. But to do paranormal investigations, you do not have to have a team.
Right. Very true. I've Oh, 99% of my life I've done it by myself or with now Larry, my partner. That's
Yep.
basically it. It's a lot quieter.
Mhm.
A lot quieter.
You get more done. You end up
Yeah.
goofing off and you end up just doing stupid stuff because we all have an ego. If there's somebody else there, we're gonna be a little bolder. We're gonna show off a little bit more. And
Hmm.
there's always the possibility of somebody farts on the investigation and they're embarrassed by it, and you end up with some sort of EVP that's a burrito. And it if you are going to be on a team, be a professional.
Right.
Go out there, dress like a professional, carry
Co-
yourself like a professional, and
You do. You get a lot more.
respect your client's privacy.
Definitely. Your client's privacy. And not only that, but also you walk in dressed professionally, the spirit world will respect you more and will be willing to talk to you more.
I had a client once, and they were a high-profile individual, and they're busy. They're not at home a lot, so we were investigating. I was looking at some evidence, and I needed to do on the TV shows, the reveal where you sit down with the laptop and you go through everything with the
Right.
client. But I needed to go over some stuff with them because we actually debunked the case. It wasn't paranormal. We found out what was going on. We found they lived on this beautiful property on the side of the mountain where the sun comes over, and that was what was causing the issues because they had some pretty grand architecture, and it was the way that it was catching the light was causing some interesting stuff to happen across their security
Okay.
cameras. So I had to meet with them. I could only meet with them at their office. So I went into the boardroom. You're not going to get in with a t-shirt with a graphic design and blue jeans. So like I went in dressed in office attire like a
Right.
professional. And in the boardroom, we closed out, or I think they frosted it. It's one of those with the things
Right.
frost. And he sat down. I did an hour and a half presentation on their
Right.
board, and that was that. The more professional you are and the more you fit into those environments, the better cases
Yeah.
you're going to get.
Very true. Very true. I still to this day, I remember my father would always say, even if you're going to apply for a job as a gas attendant, dress up, look professional. It's just pumping gas, but it's how you present yourself. You're more open to whatever job they have because they see you and they say, well, they're dressed up this way, so um, they must want the job.
Yep.
So that's,
Yep.
and besides, it kind of respects the person, doesn't it? The owners of the property. I'm always dressed in black skirt, black pants, whatever, slacks, and always a proper, you know, um,
Mhm.
top.
And it's not like you're not wearing a tie. You don't dress up in
No.
a suit or anything. It's like when I was an investigator, I learned this from police detectives. Police detectives would dress a certain way during that
Right,
time because it showed
right.
authority and people would open up to authority. I found that if I dress in a manner that just says, I respect
Hmm.
you, that I get more information from people, and that works the same way.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing to connect with people, if you look at them and you kind of spend time watching that
Hmm.
area, you'll find out. Okay, so this is a blue jean and polo
Hmm.
thing. Okay, this is a sweater and
Hmm.
khakis. This one I need to wear a
Hmm.
tie. And just dress appropriately, and it sucks at first, but you'll learn how to do it. When I was an investigator and I was trying to learn this skill, I kept multiple outfits in my
Hmm.
car. I would look at who was going into the building I was about to go into, and then I would change and go in so I fit
Good.
in.
Good. That's
And that's
perfect idea, though. You know, you thought of it, and yeah, it's true. And to clarify, the only reason I know a little bit about the PI is because I took training, but I never got my license. So kind of know how boring that could be also.
yes. Oh my god, getting the licensing and the
Hours,
paperwork.
hours just sitting
Yes.
there. Okay, can you be done? And let's go to the next step. At least when you're driving, you were like, okay, run,
Yeah.
you go through traffic and you may do a U-turn here and there, but you have something. This
Yep.
inactivity was just sitting there.
Mhm. Surveillance was the worst. The classes, like, we spent hours learning how to photograph a puddle from a slip and fall, like a tort case or something. That was it was torture.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And then, how to testify. What do you mean how to
Yep.
testify? I just tell them what, no, you got to follow this.
You have to do
Okay.
it this way so you don't open yourself up to this
Right,
question. You have to stir things around that way. You cannot get emotionally
right,
charged.
right.
Oh
Yes,
my yeah,
yes.
no, that's I testified a lot, and I was really surprised. When I started testifying in court, I didn't think that it was gonna be, like, people actually trying to tick you off and get you to trip
Hmm.
up. It 100% is. It's this massive mind
Yes,
game.
yes. The legal system, there are laws, but it's who could juggle and who
Yeah.
can throw that ball and keep it going and who can just it falls. That's it. So,
I found I had a lot easier time if I could get the jury and the judge laughing,
yes.
and that was
Yeah,
yep.
because right there and then it's like, all right, he's safe, he's okay. It just subconsciously it just moves him in a different direction. For sure.
Yep. Defenses are down, they like me now, they hate you for trying to
Right,
attack me.
and that's all it
Yeah. American justice.
takes. That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Mhm.
So, I just, it's been a great talk. Thank you. And I'm hoping you could come back at some time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this has been great. Thanks for having me
And
on.
is there anything else else that you haven't?
Um, there's we're in talks
Mhm,
right now about maybe doing a course for, uh, paranormal podcasting and content
mhm,
creation, going through the basics of how do you set up a podcast? How do you go through and pick your topics? How do you know what you're an expert in? How do you become an I'm saying expert, but how do you become a trusted source for certain
right.
information? And we're how do you become brand
Mhm,
safe? How do you create a professional podcast that people want to listen to and is something that is going to be picked up by a network or something that sponsors or are going to want to support and listeners are going to want to support? So we're looking at doing that. I've played around with maybe doing a course for ghost hunters and for paranormal investigators, teaching them how to use the resources available to them to get the information on
mhm,
stuff and do more complete investigations. But that's way down the road.
yeah. Okay. Well, I think the paranormal one should be that should be good, and it's kind of needed because I see too many just, oh, it's just the camera, get it this, get it that, a recorder, boom boom, go out there, and some of them get hurt. So
Yeah.
they don't think of the consequences that could occur by stepping into a property or even going in there with the big ego and, oh, I could do this, and you're gonna get thrown down a peg or two.
You get what like, the big thing is, like, you get what you put
Mhm,
in, and that's true in, like, if you're doing sales, if you do a lot of activity, you're gonna make a lot of money. In these investigations, if you put in positive vibes, you're gonna get positive stuff back. If you go in with a bunch of negative stuff and a bunch of ego, that's gonna get thrown right back at you. And there's been times, when I was
mhm,
younger, I went in and I provoked, and I wish I
mhm.
hadn't,
Yeah,
because of what got put back. And again, it mirrors.
exactly, exactly. Well, I wanna thank you again. Thank you to our audience, and I'll set up, uh, where they can find you and all that in the, description, so people can get those questions out to you, so we could see you more and see those podcasts more. So, thank you, and again, thank you very much. It was great. That's it's nice to hear somebody who's a PI going into a paranormal. It's like PI, both things.
You would be surprised how many there are.
Probably. So,
Yeah.
thank you again. Have a great night, everyone. Again, many blessings. We love you. Stay right there and be right back. Bye.